Welcome to another episode of the Unintended Receiver by 91 Ultimate. Your hosts for today are myself, Richa Patel, and Jaideep Patel.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jaideep. So we're all back in lockdown, and it is quite unfortunate. Some of us are losing family and close people, and this wave is definitely hit India really hard. So we're hoping for everyone's safety and strength and power to everyone out there. Please stay together, stay safe, be mindful of your emotional, mental, physical health, and take care of yourselves. Having said that, we do, ideally, we would have been in NCS, starting our NCS sectionals this month, but that's not happening anymore. But we nonetheless want to speak about and share with the community um, a little bit of analysis and deep down thinking and some things that we think are important to discuss with regards to the NCS rules for this season. There are lots of big changes, and there are a few things that do stay the same. And we're going to talk about that mainly over this episode. We're going to cover NCS rules. And Jaideep is going to first start us off with some gossip and player and team movements around the country.
Yeah, thanks, Richa. So we wanted to, of course, on this podcast, continue to share gossip from around the country. And of course, this was anything from fun gossip to the more kind of relevant, serious stuff. And there are quite a few player movements happening this season, which we've heard about through the grapevine. So we thought we'd share that with everyone because that will, I think, create some excitement for us all when we finally get around to playing the NCS. One of the biggest things to happen is that there is a new team being made out of two other very top level teams, which is being called Ambush in the West section. This is a combination of Jumbish and Nash and a few Storm Chasers players being put together so they can put together a very, very strong team. It's like the best of all those three club teams because they want to play WUCC in 2022, I believe. And so in order to, I think Jumbish anyway has a very good chance of winning the NCS as they are, but they're adding these players so that they can make sure they win and put up a very good team for the World Championship, Club Championship event as well.
Jaideep, why are you being so elusive about the players? Do you want to share some of the names? Because the names itself are really interesting.
Yeah. It's the core of Jumbish, and then players like Mac and Saitra from Storm Chasers, and then from Nash you've got players like Tejas, Becca, I think Sophie, I want to say, although Sophie's not in the country, I believe. Becca, Nona, Nathan, Mel. Those are the ones I know about. Did I miss any from Nash?
I don't think, yeah.
Yeah, those are the main ones. So a lot of the top players. Nathan is going to be more of a coach, I believe, is the idea. He was, of course, the Team India head coach for WUGC, which unfortunately got cancelled. But yeah, he'll be the coach of that team as well. So you can see that team listed on the Ultimate Central for UPI and see the roster as well. So that was this was something we'd heard in the grapevine, but then it was confirmed by the registration online as well. So that's a new team, and then a few other big announcement for the West section, Storm Chasers. They've obviously lost Mac and Saitra to Ambush. Richa Patel on this podcast is possibly has decided not to play with Storm. Ria, Nirba, and Samad Mishra are also not going to be playing, mostly because they're busy or they've switched teams. And of course, Aniket and Vinny just had a baby, so congratulations to them. But that's going to take up a lot of their time and potentially take away from their ability to commit and play for Storm Chasers as well. Although Storm Chasers have added Nimisha and Rizvan. Nimisha is, of course, a national team player, assistant coach, head coach as well. And Rizvan's a very good Ahmedabad Ultimate silent voice player. And then a few other young players. Got Rohan, Anish, Ria, and Joanna. So yeah, Storm's going to look very different for this upcoming NCS season.
Even the leadership of Storm will be very different because they've got a lot of young players, young captains, and overall the face of Storm is definitely going to change and be very different.
Oh, okay. But they'll still have Sam and Ganesh pulling the strings at the back, right?
They're never going to leave Storm, I think. They're the ones who are creating the Storm and Storm chasers.
Exactly. Yeah, being puppet masters. So that's about the west section. If we look at the south, there's not much changing when you compare to what's happening there in the west. But we've heard from Alex Sebastian that they're getting a national team player. Somebody's joining ATC from another team, most likely. It's not going to be Pranav Rajan. We know that much. He was a Catch of the Year, Friction Gloves Award winner from Ultiworld. But they've not yet revealed who that is, so we'll find out and let you know. Airbenders is only fielding one team, so all the players are getting rostered into one team this season instead of 2 or 3 they've been at max. So that's for the south. That's all we've heard. Not much happening in Chennai as far as we know, but again, we'll let you know if we hear anything.
Actually, Chennai is going to Dika is going to be playing with Airborne, and AP is not going to be playing with Airborne. So Airborne is also going to have a few changes around in the team.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I forgot that. Yeah. So that's happening in Chennai, and going up to the north, it's really just some leadership changes. So Stray Dogs in Sweaters, club team in Delhi that performed well last season at Nationals. They've changed their captain, Shub, who's a long-standing member, super fun guy and super committed to Ultimate, and Stray Dogs has been elected. And got GK Mad, which has always been a very competitive team, not being able to attend some national events in the past because of financial restrictions or exams, are doing a lot, as we mentioned in a previous episode, about their development league, the kind of Zamradpur Park League is what I think it was called. So they're recruiting a lot of young players, which will have an impact on competitive Ultimate, I'm sure, in the years to come, but maybe even this season. So that's the player movement. Some new developments in terms of coaching. We've heard and seen that Sagar, who's originally a Jumbish player and coach, is now coaching West Coast Rascals and Kalina Thunders in Bombay. So, of course, that's on pause at the moment due to the lockdown, but he was starting to travel from Surat to Bombay once a week as a paid coach for those two teams. Rocket Praveen is coaching ATC. He just moved to Bangalore for work, so he was staying with an ATC player, Varun, and so they convinced him to also coach ATC, and he's doing a lot of great things over there. Not a lot of people know that for Puyal, the club team in Chennai, they've got Rowan McDonnell, who is an AUDL MVP coach as well, player, and also like a coach developing like ultimate content and exercises and workouts and best throws in the USA. He's doing distance coaching along with a head coach, Nandan, who was the Masters Open coach and assistant coach for the mixed Masters as well. So that's some coaching developments, big things happening for Puyal. I'm coaching Tix and Airbenders here in Bangalore, two club teams who rank top 8 typically, and a little bit of coaching being done by Minu. I say a little, but she actually spent 3 months there, and I heard that she was able to do 100 sessions. So they were doing like 8 sessions a week and pretty intense coaching clinic kind of period that she was there as part of the Playquity program that was started out of kind of a push from the UPI community heads. Started this non-profit program, and that's been happening in Assam by Mrinalini, who's also the operations manager, who's also on the second episode that we ever did. Was it? Oh, it was the first episode.
Yeah,
right?
No, it's the first episode.
First
behind the
real,
scenes of you.
Yeah. Yeah, so she was featured on the first episode of the podcast. So that's some big coaching.
I was going to say, like, all of these announcements regarding coaching, they all sound really positive. One of the biggest positive, at least that I feel as a player, is that they're all paid positions, and coaching, it's only going to, I think, get better from here. And maybe coaching for Ultimate Frisbee could become a livelihood option going forward from here, which is, again, a positive sign, not just for this um, players in the player community, but the sport overall. So I think that's a great win for the sport. We should all feel proud and happy to celebrate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. These are everything I just talked about, from Saga to Minu, are all paid coaching gigs that are happening. There was also one Bengaluru United coaching workshop that happened here in Bengaluru. But again, that paused because of COVID. But yeah, it's great news for Indian Ultimate coaches and players and teams. One of the few countries that actually has paid coaching by club teams. It's not as common as you might think. It's very rare. I think even in countries like UK and Australia, they don't pay their coaches. So yeah, it's quite special and quite a good development for us for Indian Ultimate. Yeah.
Yep.
And then the last kind of announcement or big thing that we, as an update from the last episode, is that the AUDL, the American Ultimate Disc League, has announced that they've signed a partnership to broadcast live games, all the AUDL, which is starting on June 5th. And so the games will be broadcast by Eurosport in India. That's a huge deal. Hopefully it's going to push the popularity of the sport as more and more people watch it. It's a very spectator-friendly version of Ultimate Frisbee. It's not the same as what we play, but it definitely promotes Ultimate Frisbee alongside Ultimate Frisbee that we play as well. This is a big thing, and hopefully 91 Ultimate is going to have another announcement for that coming up, which we'll announce across social media coming up.
Yeah, and also, by the way, Jaideep, I don't think it's all the games. When I was reading the official statement, it's going to be game of the week that gets broadcasted on Eurosport India. And yeah, I think that's interesting, because I think it's going to be just like one game of the week from the official statement. We should get it clarified if all the games are going to be broadcasted. And yeah, so but that is definitely still exciting to see on like popular TV screens, ultimate being played, and no more having to explain to people that it's only a sport that is played just for recreational and not really competitively.
Yeah, that's a good point. Even if it's one game a week, yeah, absolutely. That it's open to the general public and it's up there with the likes of IPL and
Yeah,
others, IBL, ISL. People are able to watch it in the public, and we can say, here's the game that we watch. Turn on your
yeah,
TV. Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, that's all the updates. So we thought we'd share those as the opening for this episode, as we usually do with most podcast episodes. But now we'll get over to the main content, the main topic, which is the NCS rules. As you may or may not know, if you're a captain or player, you will be excited to know what the rules are, particularly around rostering and the point system, because that really changes how teams get ranked throughout the season. And this set of rules seems like even more intricate and detailed. They've added more points aspects to the rules. So reading and knowing these rules is like, for me, I think it's like learning another set of rules for Ultimate. Like that 14-page document and this are comparable. It's quite intricate and detailed, and we're going to take you through what we see as the big changes and explain them, give some examples of how that might play out and how we think it's going to affect the season.
Yeah, so I mean, we're going to first talk about the point system, which is one of the biggest changes. And I mean, Jaideep, do you want to, just talk a little bit in detail about the whole optional format this season, which is a very big change, and it's definitely going to uh, impact teams and the scoring system as well.
So, after having read the rules a few extra times and multiple conversations with UPI's competitions committee members, we've realized that our interpretation pertaining to the points in the NCS rules were previously wrong. Hence, in the interest of sharing factually correct information, we are actually re-recording and publishing an updated version of the NCS Rules 2021-2022 podcast episode. So this exercise and realization reflects the importance for teams to thoroughly understand the new point scorings and other changes in the rules. You can reach out to us for further clarification and discussion, but of course, reach out to the competitions committee first for the official interpretation and explanation of the rules. What we're sharing here is just our understanding of it, and so it's worth noting that as a disclaimer, we are not speaking on behalf of the UPI. This is the Unintended Receiver podcast hosts' understanding. Okay, so we start with the phases, and the first big change is that this year you can play any sectional or regional throughout the country. Before, in previous NCS seasons, last year and the year before, you had to stick to your own section that you were allocated, and that was announced on the UPI website first, which teams are in which section, and then you had to play within that section and accordingly vie for those points that are available in that section. But this year, in the new NCS rules, you can actually go to any part of the country, play any sectional or regional, and face off against teams that are also entering there, typically the local teams, and potentially vie for the points that are available there. Play against different teams that you're not used to playing against, which is a nice advantage, kind of a throwback to the old format, the tour system, Ultimate Opens that we used to have, where you could travel around the country and experience local culture in that part of the country. That's how it is going to be this year for any sectional or regional tournament. So that includes open and women's tournaments and the mixed regionals. And of course, if there's any beach tournaments happening, you can also, it applies to that as well. So that's a good and nice change for some teams who might be willing to travel.
So I think it's important for us as players, or as teams entering into NCS, to also understand the difference between how the competitions committee has kind of divided up phases. And why is it important? Because last season, where we were used to, within a sectional playing two different tournaments, and then at the end of that sectional, the average of those two tournaments, adding up and totaling it and averaging it out, counted as the sectionals end ranking or end points. Versus this year, because it's a phase system, which is that each sectional, regional, mixed regional, regional open and women's, beach nationals, which is beach mixed nationals, and grass nationals, mixed nationals. Each individually is a phase. So, for example, if a team ends up playing only one tournament within a sectional, which is a phase, that uh, that kind of uh, the points accrued at or the performance at that one tournament will go towards that phase. And if, for example, a team, because within the optional format you have the option to play west sectional, north sectional, east, south, wherever, if you end up playing five sectionals and your top performance, which is whichever you end up finishing the highest, that will be counted towards your phase of the sectional. So actually, what the competitions committee is trying to do with this new phase and the best of three format that comes into play at a later stage, when you go into looking at the larger national ranking and the ranking. Yeah, they want teams to go in playing more and more sectionals, more and more regionals, and they want more even cities to host sectionals and regionals. And also what happens is that each phase also gets replaced, right? So coming into this season, you are coming in with the best of the three from your last year's performance. And also something to note from last year is that we had two sectionals. The sectional 2 is being awarded points as beach nationals, because we didn't have beach nationals last year. So what each team ended up getting at sectionals 2 is going to be awarded as beach nationals.
Yeah.
So yeah, that means that the top three out of these phases, you're coming into this year with that. And once you come into the sectional this year, whatever points you get accrued will replace your performance of last year. And so which means that the new 5 that will be counted would be not your last year sectional, but the most recent sectional performance. And in case if you choose to not play this sectional, it will be awarded a 0, which means that it is in the interest of teams to play sectionals and play regionals, or just play all phases this year, because if you don't, you get awarded 0 points, which means that you lose out on your performance from last year.
Yeah, generally speaking, you should play sectionals just to make sure you get the points. We're going to come to an example later on where that might be an exception. But yeah, generally speaking, that is what you want to do. And that's, having spoken to the competitions committee, that is what they're trying to promote also, that they want the elite teams to play sectionals as well as think of those as important as regionals and nationals and beach mixed nationals.
Yeah. And like to say that it's 1/5 of the total, and
20%,
I mean,
yeah.
20%. So even nationals, your performance at nationals is 20%, and similarly your performance at sectionals is 20%.
Yep.
So it's just
Counts
going
for the
to
same.
say, yeah, it counts for the same, even though at national your performance does give you certain higher advantage in terms of if you're a top team, you get qualified for other tournaments internationally. But yes, totally it counts to 20%
Right.
of the overall ranking.
Yeah. And you also mentioned something we haven't talked about yet, which is beach mixed nationals is being introduced into the schedule this year as an additional tournament, and it's its own phase. So
yes,
the points that you can pick up in that will also count towards for 20% of ranking points if you play that and perform in that tournament. If you miss it, it's 0. It won't count. You get 0.
Yeah. And with this whole replacement, and as teams progress through this season, and the points that get replaced for last year's performance, in the long run, the more teams get zeros in different phases, the lesser points they have to kind of like kind of add towards the best of 3, right? So it's in the interest of teams to ensure that they have at least the bare bone amount that they can accrue versus a 0.
Yep, exactly. Not skipping open and women's, for example, because that just becomes 0. So just enter however many women you can, and then try and enter an opens team as well. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So can I move to this kind of case study example?
Yeah, I think you can. Yeah.
It's a good point, because if we, like you said just now about the best 3 from last season. So I'm going to look at 2 examples. One is Airbenders and the other one is Stray Dogs in Sweaters. So if we look at Airbenders, their points coming into this season, you can see the table. It's linked in the UPI NCS rules document right at the end of the appendix, I believe. And so they have quite a good number, 837. And this made them 6 in the ranking points. I'm not sure if we mentioned this already, but this ranking table is points wise. It's not the nationals ranking. The nationals rankings looks different. For example, for Stray Dogs, they finished 5th last season, but now they're 17 in the ranking points. It's just a different table, right? But so like back to Airbenders, they got 837. How is that 837 calculated? Well, if we look at their 5 phases from last season, they got their 3 highest were mixed regionals. They got 932. And then the next best was nationals, 911. They finished 3rd in the country. great finish. And then the next one is actually Open Women's Regionals 669. So they're out of the 5 phases, because we count sectionals 2 as beach nationals. Their 3 highest were open women, both the regionals basically, and nationals. So that means, because you talked about replacement system being 0, in sectionals 1 last year they got 582. If they skipped sectionals this year, they would get 0. Okay. And then if you look back, so 0 is one of the phases plus these 4, which are nationals, mixed regionals, open women regionals, and beach nationals. Beach nationals doesn't even come into it for their case because regionals, both the regionals and nationals were the best finishes anyway. So technically speaking, they could skip sectionals this year and still end up with the same ranking points going into the regionals phases. Although that's not something I would recommend. I teams should play sectionals to get practice, to increase participation of ultimate across the country. But technically it's true for the Airbenders team.
But also, like we discussed, Jaideep, I think if Jumbish were to do that, if they'd skip sectionals, because at sectionals it is one of their highest points, it's one of their best 3, so that would impact them severely and will bring down their total ranking points.
Right, absolutely. That 1020 getting converted to 0 affects them a lot. Also because of their open women regionals result being low, and they didn't go to nationals. So that's already a 0 for them. So that's the second example. And if we look at Stray Dogs, it's even more evident that they should play sectionals because of their nationals finish, they've got a relatively high number compared to their sectionals points. They have 656 as their ranking points overall, which is
coming into this season,
which is a result of their best 3, which is nationals 856, open women regionals last year 619, and sectionals 2 492. But if they play sectionals, if they skip sectionals they get 0, but if they play, they come in with 656, and it's likely in their section they have GK Mad coming in with 715. Let's assume that the teams are relatively the same, so GK Mad takes first position in their section and Stray Dogs takes second. They would get 656 to replace plus 2%. So so they would have something in the region of 670 instead of 489 or instead of 0. Right. Well, sorry, not instead of 489. It'll just be 0 is the other alternative. So they should definitely play sectionals, because instead of getting 0 points, they would get something which would be higher than even their beach nationals equivalent, sectionals 2 492. They'd probably get 650 670 points. So they should definitely play sectionals according to these rules. So these are 2 examples to consider, and hopefully using these 2 examples you can look at your own team now or your friends' teams or your rivals and see what makes sense, or like how many points you can start to pick up in playing this season.
Correct. And also another thing to point out when you talk about points being picked up when entering into a tournament, it's the teams that are entering into the tournament that take their respective ranking points, and those are up for grabs, right? So in a sectional, if Airbenders, Stray Dogs, etc., everyone is playing, those many high number of points are up for grabs, which means that teams coming in from the challenger division, because this year we do not have a challenger and elite division, and so if a challenger division goes and enters into sectionals or regionals where there are higher points and higher teams and cause the right upsets, or focus their energies into breaking seed in cross pool and crucial games, there is a stronger and a lot of opportunity for challenger and lower pool teams to ensure that they get a spot into the nationals.
Exactly. Absolutely. And another way to think, going back to phases, is that it changes from surface to surface. So beach is its own phase and grass is its own phase. The gender format as well. So formats also determine phases. So whether it's open women's or mixed.
So
that's another way.
I mean, and this year we may not have bids for beach regionals, but maybe next year we do end up having bids for beach regionals. So people can end up playing for beach and grass and regionals, and but again, the performance in the best performance in that phase will be what will then be counted towards.
Yeah, in a way, it's in the interest of teams in Chennai and perhaps Mumbai and Goa to actually conduct
To
those
host.
tournaments. Yeah, to host,
Exactly.
because they
Yeah.
can get points,
Yeah.
which will count towards their overall
Exactly.
points in grass
Exactly.
tournaments as well. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. And I think just like we have a WIF-DIF rules quiz, maybe one day the Unintended Receiver podcast can do a NCS rules quiz
NCS quiz. Yeah, because
just to
it is
test your
definitely.
knowledge,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. For
interpretation.
sure. Yeah.
Going over to rostering, some of most of the stuff is the same, which we'll talk about at the end of this. But one big thing for college teams and players is that they can now dual roster with any club team, as well as their own college team for events. So if, for example, Bits Goa is not attending a tournament, then those players can opt to play for a club team instead, and they don't have to. They're allowed to dual roster. They're not counted as guest players or disassociating from their college team. So this is something that the college committee asked for from the competitions committee in UPI, and it was seen as a good idea. So it means that college players can play more tournaments, one, but they're not like they're not at a disadvantage if their college team doesn't attend a tournament. They now have another option to go and play for a club team. And there are a lot of great college players now coming up through the college system who are having a big impact on club teams. Players like Sri Lakshmi from Bits, Akhil Nori, a lot of Ashokan players like Nishant and these guys. So it also used to happen in the past where colleges would lose players to club teams. Like Priyansha from Ashoka opted to play for Storm Chasers rather than Ashoka
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the NCS system, and she wasn't allowed to dual roster. So a good college team that was actually looking to win college nationals lost a very good player because she wasn't allowed to play for both teams. And now that rule is kind of being relaxed, or it's being amended so that you can play for both teams. You can play national college championship and not national college championship, but you can play for the sections. You can play for college teams in any of the sections, which means that colleges have a better chance at making it to regionals and nationals. And like you said, like it's good practice for them because really colleges do and should be focusing on national college championships instead.
College bit. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I mean, I think that something that also is great out of this is that, if the more experience and the more exposure that the college players get at a young age, at a college level, the more they're able to take it to communities after their graduation, which is what a lot of the Stephens graduates are doing this season, which is they're going and helping to expand the community in Kerala, which is a great sign, a great positive sign. So yeah, that's also going to help college players build skills and build their ability to contribute to communities and clubs after their college.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really good for college players and teams. I think it's going to have a good impact. Yeah. So that's about college players rostering. In terms of other rostering rules, big changes is that every mixed team must now name at least one woman as one of their captains. That doesn't mean spirit captains. It means the normal playing captains. Although of course they can be spirit captains as well. But so that's under the assumption that most teams will have two captains. Either they're both captains or like co-captains, or there's a main captain and a vice captain, but at least one of them has to be a woman. And that's a big thing because there aren't many teams that have female captains or had them in the past. I think Meghna, Sneha are some of the main ones.
Suhani, Garima.
Sahani, Garima, yeah, they've been all part of leadership before, but
Yeah,
that's like a handful compared to the 100 club teams that exist today.
that we have. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I think that it's actually, I mean, what I'd like to see pushing from this rule is just, a lot of times you can just have keepsake and kind of like just
Token.
like women captains, yeah, show captains, but it will be great to see these women players calling lines,
Yeah.
making strategic decisions. That's where I am going to be more interested about how this rule actually plays out on the field. So it'll be a great way for also clubs to find ways to empower these women
Yeah.
that come into these leadership roles, not to just be a leader, but also fully embody the ask that this captain role calls for.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And we've seen where it's had good impacts before, particularly players that have played on national teams and then come back to their club teams, like Suhani, Datri, Nimisha, Minu, um, all these plus many more players,
Sahitra,
Saitra,
Riya,
Sangi, Sneha. They've all had
Yeah,
international experience and they're able to give that back. They are, players that have the most experience or most knowledge being shared from national team coaches and experience. So bringing that to their club teams and promoting that is also a good thing. But yes, the main thing is the gender equity and equality that we have to start seeing within leadership of teams, not just on the line. Yeah.
lion, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the new rule of women pulling the disc at World Games, which is not a WIFTIF rule, just to clarify. And while NCS is following WIFTIF rules and not the World Games rule, it'll be great for India ultimately even
Mm,
implement that and see more women pulling the
yep.
disc. It
Yep.
is being tested as as an experiment at World Games, and like you were saying, Jaideep, like the WIFTIF rules are set for 2024, so we might not see that rule coming in at WIFTIF events, but yet it will be a great thing for teams in India to start practicing, where they
Yeah.
can find ways to empower women and play um, more like strategic roles in
Yeah.
teams.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. That's a big thing. Again, there's very few teams that have female pullers. And the rule is that it's the same gender has to pull. So
Yeah,
even when it's
yeah,
four men on the line, a man has to pull. It can't be a woman,
full,
for
yeah,
example. So that's
yeah,
the actual
yeah,
rule. But yeah, it's being experimented at World Games. I'm not sure if it can get added to the rules. It's unusual that rules will get amended just for one thing, unless it's like a format thing, for like a tournament, a world championship or beach. Then they have different rules being added. But if it's since this set of rules it's the first time ever they've set rules for 4 years and said, it used to be called 2017 or 2011 rules edition. Now they've
yeah,
actually said 2021 to 2024, which covers a 4 year span. All
yeah.
those WIFDF events. I hope we don't have to wait. If it seemed to be a good thing and goes off with good success at World Games, it'd be unfortunate if we have to wait till 2025
Still,
for it
yeah,
to be
yeah,
implemented. And if they can just
yeah.
amend the rules for this one thing, that would be good. And they may have other things to add on, but that would be
Yeah, and in fact, it might be even great that teams don't follow it as just a rule, but as a practice. Like a
practice.
rule
Yeah.
doesn't even have to be
Yep.
implemented
Yeah.
for this to happen, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't really need
Yeah.
the rules to
Yep.
tell us that women need to pull the disc. We need
Yeah.
teams to practice it on the field.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's positive discrimination, so we're trying to push it and say it's a
Yeah,
rule. So,
yeah, yeah,
and even if
yeah,
WIFDF don't make it their rules, we can make it rule, just like we've done
yeah,
with the one woman captain.
yeah, yeah,
So NCS and the competitions committee rather may make it a rule. That would be kind of cool. So
yeah.
if anybody from the competitions committee is listening, think about it, put it in. Maybe we can be the, what's the word,
Trendsetter,
trendsetters. Yeah. For
trailblazer.
trailblazers. Yeah. Pioneers of doing
Yeah,
that in the world, since
yeah,
we've done that for a lot of other things. So yep,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
another change in terms of rostering people on your roster, women leaders. For the opens and women's tournaments, so if you remember last year, we had the experiment with what some people call single gender, but the actual term is open and women's tournaments. We'll be allowed 2 guest players per team. Um, doesn't matter like if you're a top 8 team or a bottom 8 team or 100th ranked team. Now you're allowed 2 guest players, and So we wanted to add something about rostering rules, which is a clarification or correction as well, which is about guest player rules. A correction is that a rostered player can guest play once within any phase, and that repeats for for the subsequent phases. So a rostered player can guest play within the sectional phase, and then when you move to regionals, that resets. They can again guest play if they want to. If their rostered team is not attending that tournament, they can guest play without derostering. And again, that changes for the nationals phase. Although we're not allowed in the top 16 any guest players anyway. So that's a clarification about the guest player rule. It's still the case that if you're unrusted at the start of the season and then you guest play once, you cannot play any tournament for the rest of the season with a rostered team. You can't roster. So this is particularly true. For example, foreign players come and they guest play. They can't guest play again for the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, for players who are affiliated to the UPI, it does make sense to roster for a team. And then if somebody wants to, kind of experiment or play for another team, can kind of roster and try out even. But and also in the rules they do mention mixed beat sectionals. So they might have sectionals if enough cities bid for it. So who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe we might have a sectional in Goa if the Goa Ultimate Community does bid, or Chennai even. But yeah, that would be interesting and nice. Or Kerala even.
Yeah, absolutely. Kerala would be awesome. So they've made the rules for just in case if a community is willing to host and then bid for a beach format tournament, either in sectionals or regionals. There's rules for that as well, and so it's not fixed that those tournaments are going to happen. But if a community wants to organize it, then they can, and that will help them figure out the ranking for nationals.
Yeah.
First ever nationals. So right now it's just a guess of like who would be better. So rather than Jumbish, it might be Fly Wild as the #1 rank for beach nationals.
Yeah. They might even do some funny coin toss thing that goes on at the back.
For the seeding.
For the seeding. This is just me imagining things, but maybe like, oh, I don't like this person on this team. Let's do a coin toss.
I do suspect that that's what happens at the competitions committee level sometimes when they're deciding formats and schedules. They have this like addendum in the rules which says seedings may change ±2 or something.
Yeah,
because of
they do that.
Regional.
Yeah.
And I always wonder how do they subjectively determine who goes up and who goes down. But anyway, so we'll see. Continues to be the case.
Yeah, and then the last thing is that World Ultimate Club Championships and Asia Oceanic Ultimate and Guts Club Championship qualifications would be determined by the ranking at mixed nationals. And like you were saying, Jaideep, that but even though a team might be ranked high, and I think Ambush is being put together with the intention of going to WUCC for competition. But if a team that stands on the top team, like for example Fly Wild, and if financially or schedule like for reasons they can't, then the following teams do get the options to go. But
yeah, that's what happened when Stall 7 attended Cincinnati. They were like, it was Jumbish technically that had topped the ranking, but they were not going to be paying to go. And Stall 7 opted to go. So
and I think that just we also just to talk a little bit about some of the rules that continue to be retained, and which captains, coaches, senior members don't really have to really bother re-looking at, is that triggering score for spirit scores continues to be uh, that format will stay the same. So if you perform poorly on spirit scoring, you will get informed by the spirit committee, and the follow-up process will happen. The And the number of days sectional, regional, nationals will be played will stay the same. So 2 day sectionals, 2 day regionals, and 3 day nationals. Although I think that this year in the nationals, because there are 32 teams and no elite and challenger divisions, they have mentioned that only top 8 teams. I mean, the top 8 teams will get to play the semi-finals, and they might not have the 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, etc. Games.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that reseeding will happen within the pools. No all pool reseeding. The 50 sorry we the rules that we will play with are, we will follow the 50 rules, and mixed ratio A rules will be followed, and each club team has to have a minimum of 7 per gender for any tournament that they subscribe for. And in
Yeah.
fact, I mean, the rule that you need to have uh, put in a women's team of, you need to field a women's team for the single gender, and then only then can you play in the opens, is still continues to be the same. So yeah, there are some things that stay the same, but a few things that do have changed.
Yep. 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 All of which we hopefully covered. Yeah.
So, in terms of just wrapping up regarding NCS, and just how ultimate feels like, how resuming would feel like this year. I mean, we have been all out of action almost 1.5 years now, and that definitely is going to impact a lot of our bodies and when we get out there. But having said that, international communities across the world are coming back out. We're seeing high school leagues in the US. A lot of leagues and championships are being already planned, and teams are being put together for different tournaments across the world. So yes, while these are developed nations and countries that have had a strong vaccination program, and the COVID cases are phenomenally low. India, on the other hand, yes, we're slow on our vaccination drive, and our cases at the same time are really substantial. But hopefully in the next 2 months, vaccination will pick up, and we will all stay safe in those lockdowns are being put in place, and that will bring down the number of cases. So yes, stay strong, everyone. There is hope on the other side. We can see from the international communities, if vaccination programs continue, we all get vaccinated and stay safe for just a couple of months, we do see ourselves getting back out there playing, starting small with sectionals and local tournaments, and then slowly going on towards nationals.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, Jaideep, anything you want to add? Otherwise, we can say our goodbyes.
Yep. No, no, just the usual. Hit us up on social media or email contact@the rate91ultimate.com. If you have any things that you want to add, or you have any feedback or any news, gossip, we'd love to hear from you. And yeah, I think just echoing what you said is a nice point to end on. Stay safe, stay strong. We'll see you on the field soon. Goodbye from me.
Goodbye, everyone. Take care.